It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Ann Charles. Hi, Ann. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. Happy day after Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy day after Thanksgiving. How was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, I won the pie eating contest, but there's a price that comes with that.
I would
it was
imagine.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you're probably not going to eat too much today then, yeah?
No, I'm barely eating today. Today I'm going to go for a walk and just kind of take a break from all those carbohydrates yesterday.
So you are an author, USA Today best-selling author. And what's your new book here? The thing I got from Mickey is got a few books on it, so I don't know which one you're promoting at this point.
We have a new book that came out at the beginning of October. Can't Write Around It. It's the third book in the Deadwood Undertaker Series that I write with my husband, Sam Lucky.
Oh, that's your husband. Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering who Sam was. Why don't you just give us a little bit of your backstory, and then we'll talk about the book.
Okay. Well, I've been published since January 2011, so it's been almost 10 years now. And prior to that, when I published, I was a small press that I'd formed with my agent after years and years of trying to break into the big houses and almost making it a couple times, but marketing would tend to shut me down because they weren't sure I had an audience, because I write a lot of mixed genre. I don't pick just, one straight mystery or straight romance or, one particular thing. I like to mix the genres. So that in the mid-2000s gave me a lot of trouble trying to get into a publishing house. And so we ended up going forth and creating a small press on our own back in 2011 and publishing a few of my books along with some other authors that were running into the same problem. So for a few years I was co-owner of a small press, and we published my books. And then in 2015, January, right of that year, I broke off and went completely independent author, walked away from the publishing company just because I couldn't keep up with the schedule of being a publisher and promoting other authors, as well as writing books and promoting my own. So I had to choose, basically, and I chose to go forth on my own. I already knew all the ins and outs of publishing books by that point, so it was an easy jump for me. And since then, I've just been an independent author. I have 5 different ongoing series at this time, and each is a little bit different mix of genres. And the most recent release I have is with my husband, the one we write together, and that's the Deadwood Undertaker Series. It's an Old West mixed with adventure and humor and some supernatural all together. So we have a lot of fun back in the 1870s of Dakota Territory and things going on there. And it's kind of a prequel to my main Deadwood Mystery Series that has won multiple awards. So you get to know what happened 100 plus, well, I guess it's about 150 years prior now than what happened in the contemporary Deadwood series. And because we're supernatural, some characters can cross over, which is a lot of fun. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, the last 10 years, what's been going on. And it's been a busy time, but it's a lot of fun, too.
So you said now you're an independent author. Does that mean you self-publish?
Yes, I do everything myself.
Okay. And reason being was because you like to mix the genres, and that was difficult for publishers to deal with?
In the mid-2000s, when I was actively submitting to different publishing houses, I had a lot of, we like what you write, but we want you to pick. Are you going to write just straight mystery or just straight romance, or is this going to be an adventure book? And they wanted, like a 60 or 70% of that and, less of the other elements, so they could put it on a shelf, and sell it with the mysteries or the romances or wherever it fit. And what comes out of me is a big mix. I love mixed genre movies and other books, so this is kind of what I wrote. And so, I had some offers to write for, a publisher if I'd work with their template, and I just knew I can't even stay on to my own outline. There's no way I'm going to be able to stay with yours. So that's what propelled me. And I'd won awards with Nearly Departed in Deadwood, which is the first of the Deadwood Mystery Series, multiple national awards, and I just thought, well, we're just going to go forward and see if I do have an audience for this mixed genre story, and that's kind of what got it rolling.
Well, I've had this conversation with other authors and with musicians that, mixing genres is possible these days because of technology and because people can self-publish. With music, people can produce and distribute their own online. Wasn't really possible before. But my question has always been why the publishers need to be so fussy about choosing a genre. I mean, even to a point, musicians have that problem when they sign with a major label, is that they have to, the label needs to pigeonhole them into some sort of format.
Well,
it's purely from a marketing point of view, though, right? It's purely from...
Yes, that was my understanding early on, was where are we going to put you on a bookshelf? If we can't call you a complete, complete romance, where the story is romance mainly, or mystery, then how do we shelve your story? Where do we put it in, to sell? And what's wonderful about the internet and the way things have shifted with ebooks and other vendors is you can choose multiple categories. I can put my book in a romantic suspense category as well as a women's sleuth mystery category, and hit on both shelves online, which helps, break up that problem some. But yes, I really learned early on in the game how much marketing has a say in so much of the book publishing world, because they have to be able to sell it, this wonderful story they've acquired. And if they don't think they can sell it, well, they got a problem. And that's what happened to me with Nearly Departed in Deadwood, that, like I said, it went on to win all these awards. The big publisher I was trying to go through with, the editorial department loved it and pushed it up to final acquisitions. But then marketing came in and said, well, it's set in the Midwest. We don't think you have a big enough audience for this, so we're going to pass. So, and that, was at the time pretty devastating. It takes months to get to that point and then to get the big rejection. But at the same point, it was good because it lit a fire under me to go, no, there is an audience. I grew up a lot in the Midwest. So I can tell you, these people read a lot, and I think they'll like this story. So thanks to, at that point, the ebook industry that was really booming, starting to boom, I was able to put it out there and get some traction right away, and that helped boost everything and get me rolling.
What would your advice be to somebody who is just starting out? What would be the benefit of chasing a publisher as opposed to doing it yourself?
Well, doing it yourself is a lot of work. It'll eat every hour I'll give it. This beast is, publishing beast of that's what I call it. It'll take anything I'll give it, any time I can give it. There's things that I do that you don't have to do so much when you're with a big publisher. For one, I work directly with distributors. So I am the one going out, I'm talking to different distribution companies, seeing if they're willing to sell this. Yes, I can sell you and get the product to you. So I have to act as a publisher in that way, where if you are with a publisher, you don't have to do that. That's not to say you can focus on just writing, because that's not true either. With marketing what it is today, all of us, that are doing so pretty well tend to spend a good 50% of our time marketing, whether it's placing ads, setting up booths on Facebook, interacting on social networking. there's so many forms of marketing that we do in order to keep building that client base, or not client base, fan base. So it depends on what you want. Now, I have some really good author friends that they don't want to do all that. They just want to write the book. They want to show up at a book signing and the books be there for them to sign. They want to do that. So they're with publishers and not doing the independent route. And that's 100% great. If that's what you want, to go forth. But I'm kind of entrepreneur spirit, and I come from parents that are. So for me, doing it all, well, it can be tedious at times, but that just seems natural. And my husband's the same. I mean, we really have been in this together, even though we just have the one series together. He's always been with me behind the scenes, helping with all the different parts of this business.
Which way is the money better?
Well, it depends who you talk to. But I think that for me, it would clearly have been indie. Even if I had gotten in with that publishing house, I'm actually grateful it didn't happen because of the whole 3-book contracts. And if you don't, earn out on your advances, they'll kill your, series. I've seen that happening time and again over the years. Great series being shut down basically because the publishers didn't want to invest any further in it. And I'm glad that I could go forth on my own and decide on the length of my series and what I want to do. And, when I started back in 2011, that's when you could go free, for example, on Amazon, and it wasn't not a lot of people did it. It was just like you would do a free run for a week or so. And boy, did that net lots and lots of readers, because free books, that was a new thing back then. Now it's a regular thing, so it doesn't have the impact. But I was able to build a nice fan base early on that I keep working at, constantly building and adding. And they're wonderful and supportive, and because of that, I do great on my own. However, some people do well with publishers. So it really comes down to what you want to do, what roles you want to play in the whole thing. Do you want to have a complete say over your cover? Or do you want to just maybe have a little input? I mean, things like that. Because if you want total say, you have to be independent. If you want to let someone else decide, and maybe you can say yes or no, then you go, publisher will do that. So there is no, I don't think, this is the best way ever, because what works for me might drive other people crazy.
Well, that's true. Everybody has their own style. Let's talk just a little bit about your new book, Can't Ride Around It. I'm looking at the cover. This is Old West.
Mm-hmm.
And
this is 1870s Deadwood, Dakota territory.
Okay. And you said that there's also, aliens? Vampires?
No, not aliens. No, not vampires either.
What was it?
Supernatural.
Okay, supernatural.
Is more like ghosts and otherworldly creatures, but it's not a vampire. It's not, it's not any of that. The typical, and it's not cowboys. And what was that movie? Cowboys versus Aliens or whatever.
Cowboys versus Aliens.
It's not. Yeah. It's supernatural. So for one thing, that's ghosts. That supernatural now is a term they use for anything that has usually ghosts in it, but as well as other creatures, other beings from whether it's parallel realms or different thing like something like that. So, and that's what there's a blend this here of Western, with a lot of research put into it to get the Western details right, as well as the supernatural. And the supernatural, because that's what ties into my modern day Deadwood series. It's the same town. It's just, 150 years prior what was going on. So you can see how things were happening then and, now what's happening still that they're dealing with. And that's where the supernatural comes in, of course, because, ghosts of people that were there then that are still around now. So it makes it kind of fun because it opens it up wider to things you can have in the story happening because you have, not a flat timeline. It just opens things more.
And the book is...
But, yeah.
The book is out now?
It is out, yeah. It's out in print and ebook. We are still working on that series in Audible. The first two of that series will be the Undertaker series will be out in Audible, and our audiobook, I should say, probably early 2021. The narrator we have, is reading them at this time, I believe. So usually it takes just a couple months when they're actively reading to get it all edited and out. And then as soon as he gets the first two done, we will be getting this third book put into the whole audiobook process. Okay,
great. Well, Anne, we do have to wrap this up. Thank you so much for coming on. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
I do. It's www.anncharles.com. And there's no E in Anne, so it's just ANNCharles.com.
Okay, super.
And you can find all my different books and series and links to the different formats there, as well as some fun blog stuff and newsletter links and all that kind of stuff.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing. Best of luck with your books, and try not to eat too many more pies.
We still have pie left, so I never know by late in the evening what's going to happen. But thank you. Thank you for having me on today.
Oh, you're very welcome.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on The Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Love coffee, huh? But wait a minute. It seems like every time you finish a cup of coffee, you get all of these side effects along with it. Heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, acid reflux. As the world's first and only organic acid-free coffee, Tyler's Coffee is able to provide a healthier option in the solution for more than 100 million individuals who have sensitive stomachs or suffer from acid-related modalities. This is Tyler's acid-free coffee. Coffee without the consequences.
Hi, this is John Morgan, production supervisor for DJC Productions. You're listening to The Douglas Coleman Show.
Okay, please welcome to The Douglas Coleman Show, Robert Penner. Hi, Robert. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How about yourself?
Oh, doing very well, thank you. You're an author, yeah?
I am now. I have a book out. I guess that makes me one.
This your first book?
Yeah, it's my first formally published book. I've done like self-publishing and sort of experiments and things like that, but never actually a formal published book.
Okay. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself and what you were doing before, and then we'll talk about your book.
Sure. Most of my adult life, I've been a historian. So I taught history in universities, and I have a PhD. So that's how I paid the bills the last 10 or 12 years. But I've also always wanted to write non-historical type texts, and so this was the first attempt at a serious novel.
And you taught history. What time frames of history did you teach?
19th century British Empire, in particular the colonies, so North America, Africa, Australia. I would say if you were going to narrow it down to a particular field, you might say relations between indigenous populations and like white settler populations in the 19th century. In particular, the role of religion and missionaries in that field.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a big topic. I've always wanted to write a book about what would have happened if the white people never came, and what North America and South America would look like today.
Yeah, it'd be very intriguing. I think especially because you already had all that urbanization happening in Central and South America and fairly substantial populations in the North. So it's really interesting to speculate about what would have happened if they'd been given more time to develop without the interference of smallpox and violence.
Well, yeah, smallpox for one thing. But, yeah, if the Spanish had never come and the English and Dutch had never come to the Virginia area, it would have been really interesting to see. Machu Picchu would probably be the size of Manhattan by now.
Yeah.
You know, maybe that's for a later day. I'll try that book. But,
it is. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there were a few texts like that floating around already.
Probably.
In my book, there's actually there's a theme about people building monuments, and so there's a lot of earthen monument building in the southeast of the United States as well. That's related to these indigenous civilizations.
I mean, there is kind of a parallel with Europeans, white Europeans, and the indigenous people of the American continent, where they were driven largely by religion. Now, the religion was different, but the Spanish, particularly the Spanish, I would say, they were driven by, well, Catholicism as the founding principles. Greed was probably more realistic.
Yeah. More immediate.
Motivator for them. But it was all kind of religious, you know, the English came to escape religious persecution. They wanted to start their own away from the king. And the indigenous people had their religion, be it worshiping what? They worship sun gods and moon gods and things like that, or?
I would think you could, if you were going to generalize, I'd say sort of polytheistic nature religion would probably be the safest bet.
Okay, so because I know that there's this concept that everything is connected, right? The trees are connected to the ground, which is connected to the earth, and everything has life and value and a relationship to man. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the word relationship is absolutely critical. So if you want to think about like First Nations and indigenous religions, that relationality is really important. This idea that you're in reciprocal relations with not just nature, but with like spiritual forces and other humans. Everything's this relational or reciprocal set of relations that you have to manage and establish and be careful with.
And so destroying one aspect of that relationship could irreparably harm the other parts of the relationship, according to them.
Yeah? And then that's where ritual would come into play, is how do you repair those relationships. And so a lot of the purpose of religious ritual would be trying to repair those relationships that you've damaged for some reason or the other, usually personal greed perhaps, or sexual jealousy or whatever, right? That something gets disrupted, and then the rituals sort of reestablish and reintegrate these proper reciprocal and often fairly egalitarian relations between spiritual entities.
Your book is called Strange Labor. Why don't you just give us a kind of a synopsis of that?
Well, I guess basically one day the vast majority of the humans on the planet get up and without a word they leave the cities and towns and start building these monumental sort of earthwork mazes or labyrinths, and there's a handful of people that are unaffected by this obsession and don't understand what's happening and sort of live in the remains of the old civilization without being able to enter this new society. And the book is about them trying to understand their essentially meaningless circumstances. They can't make meaning of it, but they try to understand it as best they can and live as best they can. So that'd be the primary story.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the cover. So let's just review that again. The societies decide to build these enormous mazes. How big are they?
You could drive like a semi-truck into the grooves, right? So they build them with like they keep using contemporary earth-moving equipment and so on to build these massive grooves, and they just cover huge swaths of land.
I mean, we're talking hundreds of miles, thousands of miles long and wide?
Well, because there are some complexities. Because the economy collapses, there's a lot of starvation, and it's hard to get fuel, and so it's hard to maintain the effort because everybody's doing it. But I would say there's the biggest ones I describe are like in the Great Plains and in places like Texas where they just stretch to the horizon. But for my characters, the ones they see are usually a little smaller, but certainly occasionally stretch to the horizon and you can't really see past them.
Okay, so who built these?
Just the people. So the main character is a woman called Miranda, and she doesn't talk a lot about the backstory or the initial event, but she does say that one day she woke up and she was in New York and everyone was just walking out of New York and nobody was talking anymore, and she didn't understand what was happening. And then eventually the city was deserted by all the adults, and there were some children and a few other adults like herself left behind. And then she started traveling out into the wilderness to see what was happening, and there were just these people building these massive mazes and labyrinths and not talking. So no explanation for why it was happening. It's just something that started happening, and she had no access to the motivation or the reason for this remarkable event. And then she wants to find her parents, and so as she's traveling west to find her parents, she meets other people who are in the same boat as her and trying to make sense of what happened and trying to create a new world, sort of in the ruins of the old.
So we don't know the point, then?
No. And in fact, a good chunk of the novel is just about that. It's about the people don't know the meaning of what's happening to them, but they're still stuck in this situation where they have to somehow make meaning of it. So there's a lot of people speculating and theorizing in the course of the novel, like I think it's this, or I think like a virus or an invasion from outer space, or what. So people speculate, but certainly the reader has no special insight or information into what happened. It just happened, and then these people have to deal with it.
So where do people live?
There's not that many people. You mean the people that are digging, or the people that are unaffected?
Well, I mean, they got to sleep somewhere. I mean, they just sleep on the ground and just get up.
Sleep on the ground in tents. They might set up temporary camps.
Oh, all right. Okay.
And things like that. So just think of it as a work camp. Everyone goes out and joins work camps, and they start building these labyrinths, and some of this population is also bringing fuel from somewhere to the camps and so on. Right, so there is some kind of a rudimentary economy, and it's all focused on building these labyrinths, but nobody knows why.
This is just downright strange. I mean, strange I know the title is strange, but it's yeah, I mean, it's just bizarre. Now, where did you come up with this idea?
I'm pretty sure it was a dream. So it was initially a short story. And I was really just interested in the idea of a post-apocalyptic situation where people don't know what happened. They're just in the situation. And so then how do they respond to it? But the initial idea of these mazes, people building these mazes, it was 3 or 4 years ago I had a dream, I guess. And I was going, well, this would be something to play around with. So I wrote a short story. And it was, I felt like it was a pretty good short story, and my partner was like, well, why don't you turn it into a book? And so I did. But yeah, it is strange. Interestingly enough, I find that a lot of the more positive feedback I'm getting isn't from people who are into like weird fiction or speculative fiction or even dystopian or post-apocalyptic fiction, but just are interested in novels and people. So yeah, there's a bit of a conceptual leap that you have to commit to just accepting that this strange thing happened. But once you commit to it, there's nothing particularly avant-garde or strange about the narrative itself. Or indeed, I don't think it's actually that different from life. I mean, we're stuck here. We don't really understand what's happening. There's all this incomprehensible sort of political and social and cultural behavior, and we just make the best of it.
Yeah, I'll drink to that. I think that's definitely where we're at right now. Oh, when I say strange, I don't mean that in a bad way. It's intriguingly strange. I'm not being critical of it. I'm just strange, I suppose, unique, but it also just for some reason reminds me of the Twilight Zone, in particular episodes where the character finds himself in some weird place and doesn't know why or how.
Yeah.
And they just sort of try to... There was one episode... are you a Twilight Zone fan? I mean, have you watched it?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was one episode, I forget the name of it, but it's like these strange characters find themselves in a white room that's kind of like a circular room. And in the end, they're just actually dolls that people have dropped into a Salvation Army box for Christmas. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I do. I do. And so when I was a kid, I loved that kind of stuff, but I got to admit, I was always disappointed with the explanations. And even now when I'm watching like a mystery show or whatever, I'm almost always disappointed with the explanation. I really love the middle period when you're just trying to make sense of the world. And what's like in the dolls, right? Where it's just this fascinating sort of dislocated experience. And even as a kid, I always found myself a little disappointed with the explanations. And so I guess I wrote the book I wanted, where the explanation was sidelined, where it was just the weirdness. And so what do you do in this weirdness? What's it like to be that doll in a box?
Yeah. I suppose in all fairness to Rod Serling, I mean, they did have to compress it into like a 22-minute show, you know, with commercials and everything. Yeah.
And it's not for everyone not having an explanation. I'm sure the viewing public at the time especially would have been frustrated if there wasn't like a punchline or a twist or a hook at the end that helped them organize the experience.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if they'd have just ended with those people still in that trash can, basically, you know, people would have went, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think he did have to kind of market it for, mainstream audience.
That's right.
All right. Well, do you have a website that you want to give out?
Yeah, sure. The official book website is robertgpenner.com. So robertgpenner.com. So there's a bunch of blurbs there, and I got a really good review from Publishers Weekly. They actually put us on their top books of 2020 list.
Oh, great.
So
okay.
there's probably a better explanation of the book on that site than the one I just gave you, but also some fancy blurbs from fancy writers and a link to the review, and people can just purchase it directly from that site as well.
Okay. Are you on social media?
Yeah, I use an old pseudonym, Bill Squirrel, on Twitter. So on Twitter, it's at Bill Squirrel with 2 L's.
Okay.
And the link there should be on the website as well.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it. And this book sounds intriguing. To be honest, I don't know if I want to get into that or not. I mean, it is intriguing, but it would really require my concentration and time that I'm just not sure I have. How long is it?
It's short. It's like 60,000 words. So
okay.
If you do get hooked, it's not gonna it's like a weekend tops if you get hooked.
Okay.
So it's in that sense, it's not overly immersive. I mean, I think it would be cruel to write like a 300-page book and provide it of the same sort. I think it works better as a slightly shorter text, so you don't feel robbed of your commitment when you come to the end.
Yeah, all right. So this could be 60,000 words. A 10-hour plane ride. I should be able to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
You can read it on a plane ride.
Okay, I think
In
that's a
fact,
good
I think
idea.
that's a highly appropriate place to read it because it's a pretty surreal experience to begin with.
Sounds good. All right, Robert.
All
well,
right.
Thanks for coming on the show and sharing with us. I appreciate
All right,
it.
thanks for having me.
Okay, take care.